The Lady's Delight, by Anonymous, containing I. An address to all well-provided Hibernians. I. The Arbor Vitae, or Tree of Life, a poem, shewing whence it took its root, and has spread its leaves over all Christendom, being extremely useful to students in all branches of polite literature. I. The Natural History of the Arbor Vitae, or the Tree of Life, in prose, printed from the original manuscript. I've Ridotto al fresco, a poem describing the growth of this tree in the famous spring gardens at Andi Valhall under the care of that ingenious as botanist Dr. An address to all well-provided Hibernians. Gentlemen, as nature hath been so very indulgent to ye, as to stock your gardens with the trees of the largest growth, for which reason ye are caressed, whilst men of less parts, though in some things more deserving, are laughed at, and excluded all company. As all infants, especially of the female sex, are much delighted with fruit, so as their years and other appetites increase, no wonder if that increases too. Both men and beasts have something or another for which they are esteemed, so ye being in a particular manner happy in this talents, may securely laugh, while ye daily grow in the lady's favour, and spread your branches over all the kingdom. Many a hopeful stick of wood has been produced by this glorious tree, who, after they had pisses their estates against the wall, as the good housewives term it, have by the strength of true Hibernian prowess raised themselves to the favour of some fair virtuoso, and being by her placed in a hotbed, have been restored to their pristine strength, and flourished again, and like true heroes, not envying the busy world, have been content to spend the remainder of their days in an obscure nook of the world. Thus, gentlemen, and as all poets choose the most worthy to patronize their works, I humbly offer ye the following poem, and that you may still continue as ye now are. That your trees may ever flourish, your greenhouses be secure, nor your young plants be ever nipped in the BB, or Buddhas, and that you may ever stand against all cracks, storms, tempests, and eruptions, is the hearty wishes of yours. Botanicus, the Natural History of the Tree of Life. The tree of which I fain would sing, if the kind muse her aid would bring, is Arbor Vitae, but in brief, by vulgar men called Tree of Life. First for description then, 'tis such, as needs must captivate you much. In stem most straight, of lovely size, with head elate this plant doth rise, first bare, when it doth further shoot, a tuft of moss keeps warm the root. No Lapland muff has such a fur, no skin so soft has any cur. This touched, alone the heart can move, which ladies more than lapdogs love. From this erect springs up the stalk, no power can stop, or aught can balk. On top, an apex crowns the tree, as all mankind may plainly see. So shines a filberd, when the shell, half gone, displays the ruby peel, or like a cherry bright and gay, just reddening in the month of Mayu. As other trees bear fruit at top, and they who rob 'em must climb up knife, this still more rare doth upward shoot, but at the bottom bears its fruit, and they who'd reap its virtues strong need but to lay 'em all along, all opers wide their mouths, and they'll receive the welled fruit of life, and eat and live. Not the fair tree that India bears, all over spice both head and ears, can boast more gifts than the great powers have granted to this tree of ours, that in good ale its power boasts, and ours has nutmegs fit for toasts, and bags by nature planted grow, to keep 'em from all winds that blow. The rise is slow, and by degrees both fruits and tree itself increase so slow that 10 years scarce produce, 6 inches good and fit for use, but 15 ripen well the fruit, and add a viscous balmer into't. Then rubbed, drops tears as if 'twas grieved, which by a neighbouring shrubs received. As men set tubs to catch the rain, so does this shrub its juice retain, which cause it wears a coloured robe, is justly called the flowering shrub. In every nation springs this tree, in some confined, and others more free. In England 'tis of moderate size, and oft does 9 full inches rise. But Ireland, though in soil most poor, exceeds all lands in this fame store. And sent o'er hither, it is such, as does exceed our own by much, and gets the owner many a farthing, for the ladies love it in their regarden, reading pales. That it's a tree, right sensitive, denies no honest man alive, though as one shrinks and will not stand. This rises at a lady's hand, and grows more strong the more 'tis stroked, as others fall when they are pocketed. When nipping cold bites off our nose, and hoary frost the morn disclose, in hotbeds only then 'twill live, and only when well warmed will thrive. But when warm summer does appear, 'twill stand all brunts in open air, though oft they're overcome with heat, and sink with nurture too replete. Then birchen twigs, if right applied, to back, forepart, or either side, support a while, and keep it up, though soon again the plant will droop. Motto had one very unto, and thought to mend it with a cord, but killed the tree, yet gained his ender, which makes that experiment condemned. Others have thought to mend the root, by taking from the tree its fruit, but in the nutmegs lies the breed, and when they're gone, we lose the seed thus as the sees. Their virtuosi still have don't, and always found it yield a cumt. For ahey, gee, why then buys the wood, and of it makes us whistles good, which yearly from Italia sent, here answers his and our intent. Others, too curious, will in us stay, late their plants on medlar's dock, now stock, as tongues in vulgar pass. They graft it on an open arse, but gardeners, virtuosi all, say this is most unnatural. That soil is certainly the best, whence first it sprang, and first increased, in valleys hollow, soft and warm, with hills to ward off every storm, where water salt runs trickling down, and tendrils lie o'er all the ground, such as the tree itself shoots forth, and better if 't be towards the north. When such a piece of ground you see, if in the midst a pit there be, there plant it deep unto the root, and never fear, you'll soon have fruit. Though let young botanists beware of insects that oft harbour there, which 'mongst the tender fibres breed, and if not killed, eat up the cedars good. Humphrey Bowen gives another, as each man should assist his brother. That is, to take especial care, not to set Vulvaria near. Of them 2 sorts are frequent found, one helps and t'other spoils the ground, and many a plant, thriving and tall, destroyed by them has got a fall. But Misson's taken this just napping, and against all things that can happen, both to the shrub and tree has told some how to make the deadliest wholesome. These venomous Vulvaria grow. The names and virtues. Old Mother Dacier, in her notes on Homer, some hard Greek word quotes, calls it nep, I know not what, and says it is the very plant that the tawny queen to Helen sent, to cure her griefs at all event. Great Milton's murderer says it is the famed Macara Hercules, and proves from some old Grecian poet, so plain that all men sure must know it, that of this tree the club was made, with which he overcame, 'tis said, the Spias daughters, all grown wild, and 50 mad women made mild. Which very club, it makes one laugh, Omphale turned into a distaff. Nay, the Hesperian tree was this, as show the Pomo veneris. These apples doubtless were the fruit, that twixt the queens raced such dispute, to make 'em all stark naked stand, while Paris held it in his hand, and chucked it into Venus's mouth, cause she with beauty furred the youth. The virtues are of such great note, that 20 volumes might be wrote. The juice alone green sickness cures, and purges through all corporal pores. If any maid be sick or faint, of love or father's close constraint, 1 spoonful of this cordial balm soon stops each grief and every qualm. 'Tis true they sometimes tumours cause, and in the belly make strange flaws, but a few moons will make 'em sound, and safely fetch the swelling down. Not saffron cheers the heart like this, nor can champagne give such a bliss, when wife and husband do fall out, and both remain in sullen pout. This brings them to themselves again, and fast unites the broken chain, makes feuds and discords straightway cease, and gives at least a night of peace. This rarity may now be seen in Lambeth at a garden green, or Bowen his name, who in high tone calls it the tree of silver spoon, which all the maids of curious eyes may there behold of largest size. The natural history of the tree of life. The stiption and place tree of life is a succulent plantae, consisting of one only straight stem, on the top of which is a pistillum or apex, at sometimes a glandiform and resembling a May cherry, though at others more like the nutterov, of the nutty, of the avellana, or filbeard tree. Its fruits, contrary to most others, grow near the root. They are usually no more than 2 in number, their bigness somewhat exceeding that of an ordinary nutmeg, both contained in one strong soliqua, or purse, which, together with the whole root of the plant, is commonly thick set with numerous ephibrillar, or capillary tendrils. The tree is of slow growth, and requires time to bring it to perfection, rarely seeding to any purpose before the 15th year, when the fruits, coming to good maturity, yield a viscous juice or balmy succus, which, being from time to time discharged at the pistillum, is mostly bestowed upon the open salixes of the Frutex vulvaria, or flow-ring shrub, usually spreading under the shade of this tree, and whose parts are by a wonderful mechanism adapted to receive it. The ingenious Mr. Richard Bradley is of opinion, the Frutex is hereby impregnated, and then first begins to bear. He therefore accounts this succus, the succus the farina fecundans of the plant, and the learned Leonhard Fuchsius in his Historia Stirpium Insigniorum observes the greatest sympathy between this tree and shrub. They are, says he, of the same genus, and do best in the same bed, the vulvaria itself being indeed no other than a female arbor vitae. It is produced in most countries, though it thrives more in some than others, where it also increases to a larger size. The height here in England rarely passes 9, or at the most 11 inches, and that chiefly in Kent, whereas in Ireland it comes to far greater dimensions, is so good that many of the natives entirely subsist upon it, and when transplanted, Wales have been sometimes known to raise good houses with single plants of this sort. As the Irish soil is accounted the best, others are as remarkably bad for its cultivation, and the least and worst in the world are said to be about Harborough and the tree forest of Sherrard. The stem seems to be of the sensitive tribe, though herein differing from the more common sensitives, that whereas they are known to shrink and retire from even the gentlest touch of a lady's hand, this rises on the contrary, and extends itself when it is so handled. In winter it is not easy to raise these trees without a hotbed, but in warmer weather they stand well in the open air. In the latter season they are subject to become weak and flaccid, and want support, for which purpose some gardeners have thought of splintering them up with birchen twigs, which has seemed of some service for the present, though the plants have very soon come to the same or a more drooping state than before. The late ingenious Mr. Matteo thought of restoring a fine plant he had in this condition, by tying it up with a tomex or cord made of the bark of the D. vitex or hempen tree, but whether he made the ligature too straight, or that the nature of the vitex is really in itself pernicious, he quite killed his plant thereby, which makes this universally condemned as a dangerous experiment. Some virtuosos have thought of improving their trees for some purposes by taking off the nutmegs, which is however a bad way, they never seed after, and are good for little more than making whistles of, which are imported every year from Italy, and sell indeed at a good price. Some other curious gentlemen have endeavoured to inoculate their plants on the stock of the medlar, and that with a manure of human ordure, but this has never been approved, and I have known some tree brought to a very ill enden by such management. The natural soil is certainly the best for their propagation, and that is in hollow places, that are warm and near salt water, best known by their producing the same sort of fest tendrils as are observed about the roots of the arbor itself. And first, to be very diligent in keeping their trees clean and neat, a pernicious sort of insect, not unlike a morpione or a chemix, being very subject to breed amongst the brilli, which, if not taken heed of and timely destroyed, proves often of very dangerous consequence. Another caution, no less useful, we have from that excellent and judicious botanist, Mr. Humphrey Bowen, to beware of a poisonous species of Valvaria, too often mistaken for the wholesome one, and which, if suffered too near our trees, will very greatly endanger their well-being. He tells us, in the 12th volume of his large abridgment of La Quintaina, that before he had acquired his judgment and experience, some of his plants have often been sufferers through this mistake, and he has seen a tall thriving tree, by the contact, Arthur, only of this venomous shrub, become perose, scabiose, and covered with fungus excrescences, not unlike the fruits of the Ficus sylvestris, in which case the succus also has lost both its colour and virtue, and the tree itself has so much partaken of the nature of the venomous shrub that had hurt it, that itself has become venomous and spread the poison through a whole plantation. These distempers of a tree of the greatest use and value have employed the labours of the most eminent botanists and gardeners to seek out remedies for them, in which, however, none have succeeded like the celebrated Dr. Condorcet. Miss Solbin, who from his profound knowledge in botany has composed a most elaborate work upon all the things that can happen, both to the arbor vitae and vulvaria also. There he has taught a certain cure for all these evils, while even Gao, and, what is most wonderful, has even found out a way of making the most venomous vulvarias itself wholesome, which he practices daily to the satisfaction of all that apply to him. These venomous vulvaria are but too common in most gardens about London, as there are many in St. James's Park, and more in the celebrated gardens at Vauxhall over the water. Oh, the names money for virtues. Besides the common name of arbor vitae, a very learned philosopher and great divine would have it called Yerba scientia, boni and mali. Upon very good grounds, this is the tree which grew in the middle of the garden of Eden, and whose fruits were so alluring to our first mother. Others would have it called the mandrake of Leah, persuaded it is the same whose juice made the before barren Rachel, a joyful mother of children. The learned Madame Dacier, in her notes upon Homer, contends it should be called Nepenthes. She gives many reasons why it certainly is that very plant, whose fruits the Egyptian queen recommended to Helen as a certain cure for pain and grief of all sorts, and which she ever after kept by her as her most precious jewel, and made use of as a panacea upon all occasions. The great Dr. Bentley calls it more than once Macera Herculis, having proved out of the fragments of a Greek poet that of this tree was made that club with which the hero is said to have overcome the 50 wild daughters of the Speus, but which Queen Omphale afterwards reduced to a distaff. Others have thought the celebrated Hesperian trees were of this sort, and the very name of Poma Finaris, frequently given by authors to the fruits of this tree, is a sufficient proof these were really the apples, for which 3 goddesses contended in so warm a manner, and to which the Queen of Beauty had undoubtedly the strongest title. The virtues are so many, a large volume might be wrote of them. The juice taken inwardly cures the green sickness and other infirmities of the like sort, and is a true specific in most disorders of the fair sex. It indeed often causes tumours in the umbilical region, but even those, being really of no ill consequence, disperse of themselves in a few months. It cheers the heart and exhilarates the mind, quiets jars, feuds, and discontents, making the most churlish tempers surprisingly kind and loving. Nor have private persons only been the better for this reconciling virtue, but whole states and kingdoms, nay, the greatest empires in the world have often received the benefit of it. The most destructive wars have been ended, and the most friendly treaties been produced, by a right application of this universal medicine among the chief of the contending parties. If any person is desirous to see this excellent and wonderful plant in good perfection, he may meet with it at the aforementioned Mr. Bowen's garden at Lambeth, who calls it the silver spoon tree, and is at all times ready to oblige his friends with the sight of it. The Ridotto al fresco, a poem. What various arts attempts the amorous swain to force the fair or her consent to gain? Now the balls, now bascaradezes his care employ, whose magic brain still in their shell the recipe retains, like some good midwife, brings the plot to light, and helps the lab ring swain to Celia's sight. For this his eunuchs in high buskins tread, and bread sue. For this the assembly's fixed, and the huge dome swells with the ladies' vows when the stake's gone. For this he forms the vicious masquerade, where damsels may securely drive their trade, for which the salesman, chandler, chairman loudly pray, and pickpockets too, hail the joyful day. But now what tongue can praise the mighty worth, who to Ridotto gave an English birth? To him let every Templar bend the knee, receive a ticket, and give up the fee. Let Drury Lane eternal columns raise, and every wanton wife resound his praise. Let courtiers with implicit faith obey, and to their grand procurer homage pay. No more shall duchesses to Bath repair, or fly to Tunbridge to procure an heir, as spring gardens can supply their every want, for here, whate'er they ask, the swain will grant. And future lords, if they'll confess the right, shall owe their being to this blessed night. Hence future wickedness shall take its rise, for masquerade to this is paltry vice. An era of new crimes shall hence begin, and HGGGDE rechief. Devil be of sin, no more shall ugliness be his disgrace. His head mends all the frailties of his face. When masks and balls to their conclusion drew, to this his last resort the hero flew, So by degrees the errant knights of old to glory rose, and by degrees grew bold. A while content the common road they trod, till some great act at last confessed the god. Now painters work, and dine, that starved before, and tallymen supply each needy who. Famed Covent Garden droops with mournful look, nor can St. James's, her great rival brook, each duckand and stubble, and answers, quacks to different tunes, one claps her wings for love, the other swoons for love. Each vintner storms and swears he is undone, volleys of oaths speak loud, the draws moine, Aubertine. Porter, who used to search for needful girls, now sucks his fingers, or his apron twirls, bemoans his loss of business, and with sighs in box imprisoned, lays the useless dice. Spring Garden now alone does all invite, the cit, the wit, the rake, the fool, the knight. No lady that can pawn her coat or gown will rest till she has laid the money down. Each clerk will to the joints his fingers work, and counsellors find out some modern quirk, to raise the guinea, and to see the grot, and monks the belles, to slant it at redoubt. Here seamstresses and maids together vie, and the spruce prentice shines in sword and tie, bandied in lace. The city dame appears, her hair genteelly frizzled round her ears, her gown with Tyrian dyes most richly stained, glittering with orient pearl from orphans gained. My lord, to oblige his spouse, takes tickets 3. Chris, one's for you, my love, and one for me. The third dispose as you shall best adjudge, shew where you're pleased, and where you owe a grudge. A madam elate thinks she'll be kind to Betty, to hide the slips she made with Sparketh City. But stallion Tom, who well knew how to scold, and by his mistress's favour grown too bold, swears if he has it not he will reveal, and to his master tell a dismal tale. All madam, reluctant, gives him up the paper. He at her folly laughs, and cuts a caper. Sylvia, a lady, kept by 20 beaux, who never yet could brook the marriage noose, by each a ticket offered, scorns 'em all, in hope some fool at last will victim fall, and, kindly offer, treat and ticket too, which to her charms she thinks most justly due. At last a brisk young Templar, full of fire, whom writs with money, wine with love inspire, addressed the dame, she yields his glowing charms, and for a ticket flies into his arms. So every dapper fopther and a brawny rakey will tickets to their ladies' presents make. To sin, the only certain dedication to every gentle mistress in the nation, from suburb whore to ranting dame of fashion, for none so nice as to refuse the suit, but grasps the tree, though 'tis forbidden fruit. Nears where the Thames says in pleasant windings runs, nears where the famous glass house fiercely burns, which to the love of poor desponding swains, an emblem terrible but just retains, where famed for Devoes was to have fled, with lighted match, soon as he'd done the deed, whence some pretend to say by second sight, that it foreshewed, the fate attends this night, 'cause here the fair will many matches light. Spring gardens lie shaded with verdant trees, that nod their reverent heads at every breeze. Ambassadors like Turks, hence sends express, and ministers of state like devils dress. Whime there's drees. Should some wild Indian see the various scene, he'd swear all nations of the earth do here convene, and take for quite reverse this medley farce, think Strumpers saints, or cat-sticked Boer Mars. But now the dancers' nimble feet go round, and with just measures beat the passive ground, each one inclines to different delights. Music the fair, sweetmeats the beau invite, the Templar wisely does his care enroll, pockets the pheasant, and eats up the fowls, nor will return to join the giddy rout, till he has eaten drank his guinea out. Now dancing fires the nymph to softer joys, the music's dull, the wine and sweetmeat cloys. Strephon straight takes the hint, withdraws a while, by soft endearments does her grief beguile. Soon they return more vigorous than before, do what they will, she cannot be a whore. For Premastot may dream of heavenly stews, where virgin rose, soon as it's lost, renews, and shake with every breath of air serene, as trembling for the rapes they've daily seen, when if those past can shake their height profound, ridotto sure will fell them to the ground. Here art to nature joined makes it complete, and pyramids and trees together meet, statues amidst the thickest grove arise, and lofty columns tall ring to the skies. Then next an obelisk its shade displays, and rustic rockwork fills each empty space. Each joins to make it noble, and excels buffets for food, grottos for something else. But hark! The doors on jarring hinges turn, all enter in, and the blessed scene's begun. 1,000 lights their livid flames display, pour force their blaze and form a mimic day, sudden a motley mixture fills the place, and footmen shine as lordly as his grace. To see the sad effect and power of change, ladies turned men in breeches freely range, young smooth-chinned beaux turn priests and friars, and nuns' chaste habits hide our country squires. Belles, beaux, and sharpers here together play, and wives throw their good spouses' wealth away, and when their cash runs low and fate runs cross, they then see cornutum to retrieve their loss. D. R and intrigue so mutually are blended, that one begins as soon as t'other's ended. A city heiress, blooming, rich, and fair, picks up the cards and counters with great care. Against her fate a smooth young baron. Wit he had none, beauty he had his share on, a soft clear skin, a dapper neck and waist, in all things suited to the modern taste, and most polite like all our modish brood. That is a very fool, who's very lewd. He ogles miss, she squints and turns aside, nor can her mask her rising blushes hide. At last, as bargains here are quickly made, she yields to be caressed, though still afraid, she cries. A private room's for them most fit, for reputation is the glory of a cit. This only is the place, where in a trice some angel steals the wounds of friendly vice. The nymph finds a relief for all her pains, and the lost maidenhead's restored again. But who is he in bower, close confined, with a kind fair tea unbend his troubled mind? Sure by his air, his beauty, and his grace, it Phoebus is, or some of heavenly race. A petty courtier, of small estate and sense, stood hearkening by, and cried it was the PCC. Your pardon, sir, I knew it not before, for my mistake depended on his whore, one had Latona t'other his LLER. Next to the grotto, let us bend our eye, the grotto, patron of iniquity, speak, O ye trees, with kind refreshing shade, how many whores have at your roots been made? Alas, how small the number, to what now? This one, this happy night, alone, will shew so many, that each conscious dryad flees, lest she too should be ravished through the trees. Next, rattling dice invite the tentive ear, lords loudly laugh as loud the bullies swear. The country knight o's shire sells his estate, and here with heart intrepid meets his fate. So they withdrew to quench their glowing flame, and to preserve the honour of her name. For oh, sad fate, as they ascend the stairs, at the room door her good mamma appears. Soon as she spies her child with looks demure, she charges her to keep her vessel pure. Miss pertly answers to avoid her doom, mamma, whose hat and wig is in the room, A.D. The good old dame yields at the just reproach, cries, Well, my dear, don't take too much. Well, what is this? Thus various joys soon waste the fleeting night, and sleep and lust the crowd to bed invite, some in their truckle beds to snore all day, others in gambols with their reach-tees to play, the dunghill trapes, tricked up like virtuous troll, if by good chance she gets a duprick or cull. On tallyman intrudes 12 hours more, and for a clean shift presumes to run a score. Sages may say that arts and science fail, and ignorance and folly have weighed down the scale. In England they have given new arts a rise, and what in science wants increased in vice, and to be great as angels when they fell, if not exceed at least they equal heal side. A. Finis A. 25 O.A. Way dust and absinotion, another of K's, so decrete mine. Thanks for listening to The Lady's Delight by Anonymous.